Sound Speeds, and I am driving home right now. So as you can see, it is raining, and it is also just after 2 a.m. And I'll tell you, I was working today with Michael Wynn of the Michael Wynn YouTube channel. Now, this is the first time I've worked with him in quite a while, and very interestingly enough, it was supposed to be a long day because they did an entire TV series, and at the end of it, they added 2 more days to the schedule. Well, the boom operator was not able to make the last day, so he called me in, and I just got through covering for him. So it was kind of cool being there, last day vibes, seeing how the show is coming to wrap and that kind of thing. But it was supposed to wrap at about 4 a.m., and then by the time you pack up to the trailer and stuff, we're supposed to be out of there by about 4:15, 4:30 maybe. And Michael Wynn, he is I was gonna say something silly. Well, I'll go ahead and say it anyway. All right, so Michael Wynn, he's of the Michael Wynn YouTube channel. He basically, we were talking about it, and I was expecting it to be at 4 a.m. Now, we got in this morning, or this afternoon at 2:00 p.m. So I told him at the end of the day, I said, you have cheated me out of 2 hours. I was expecting a 4 a.m. wrap. I wanted to have the extra hours because I haven't worked a full-time show since Them Season 2 wrapped about 3 months ago. And I've day played a few times with Todd Weaver, but and a couple of days with Chris Harris, but I haven't really been on a show full-time in a long time now, so I'm looking forward to it. But it doesn't look like we're going to have that anytime soon because production is very slow right now, simply because as of the time of this video, in March, actually, it's by the time this airs, it's going to be April of 2023. There's a potential Writers Guild, Directors Guild, and SAG-AFTRA negotiations that may or may not be done, and there may or may not be strikes associated with them. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen there. But in the meantime, anytime there's any talks of potential strike or negotiations that might not go in the producer's favor, they're like, whoa, hold on a second, let's back off on this. Let's not get ourselves into some shows just yet, just in case. So anyway, so a lot of shows right now are hesitant to start up. Hence why I am basically not working right now and haven't been working in a while. Now, granted, there is still the end of post-COVID, I should say, surge. There was about a 300% surge of business, and as streaming platforms came back, and they were like, well, let's go ahead and shoot everything in the world we possibly can. And it was all great for us for a long time. It was non-stop. But that cannot sustain itself. It's got to basically end somewhere. So it did. And now the situation that we're in is back to regular production levels, and actually a little bit on the slow side right now, simply because of the potential strikes going due to the negotiations. So it's going to kind of be interesting what ends up happening in time. But for right now, it's a very slow time. So it's slower than normal. I can't even recall the last time I didn't have work in January or February of a year. Normally I'm working at this time, and it hasn't happened. So we'll see when it does. Right now we're well into the second quarter of the year. Well, or at least we're in the second quarter of the year, and it's crazy. Anyway, so it has been a long time since, enough of that rambling. It's been a long time since I've done another Speed Bumps, and this is episode 16. Now, is the show going to continue? Well, it is. At least through 2023 is what I'm going to commit to. That's going to be, right now, this is episode 16. Now, what does that mean with regards to the show and how I'm going to do it? If you recall the first 10 episodes, what I did is I did a regular episode of Sound Speeds releasing on Monday, and then I released a Speed Bumps on Thursday. But I realized that my viewership over the course of the week only slightly went up. So it was almost like viewers would agree to do one or the other. Maybe a couple would do a little bit more than that. But for the most part, it was kind of like, you get one out of me, Alan. Which one would you like? So my viewership went from like here to here, and barely up at all. So I then did a test where I said, okay, I'm going to alternate a regular type of episode from Sound Speeds and a Speed Bumps, and we'll see what happens there. And it ends up being that my viewership, again, basically retained about the same. I mean, it barely went up when I started doing the alternating format. So I looked at that and said, well, there's really no advantage to me doing so many episodes and just driving myself nuts, literally, every single week trying to get out so much content while I still work a 60+ hour week, because I was at the time. So what I decided to do is do another test. And that test I was doing alternating one Monday, and then the next Monday was a speed bumps, then a regular episode on the following Monday, and then another speed bumps. And that is going to be the format that we're going to continue throughout the year of 2023. However, I must get on a show before I can do a speed bumps. I happen to be day playing for the first time in about a month today, thanks to Michael Wynn, who brought me in. So I am doing an episode of Speed Bumps on my drive home, testing out the new system. And if you notice, it's night. And it does look a little bit different than it normally does because I'm not using the security camera. Now, I know I said I wanted it to be some sort of a security or a three, not a three, what am I saying? I wanted it to be a night vision camera in color. But I don't think that is a worthwhile thing if this camera is going to work. Because this is an Insta360 X3, a camera I've wanted for quite a while now. I finally decided to buy it sometime around Black Friday when it did not go on sale, and I was like, okay, well, I was hoping it would at least go on like a sale of $5, and I'm like, let's hope, but it didn't. So I went ahead and bought it. And so I've had it now for a few months. I've been playing with it and testing it and doing different things. And I'll tell you, I really do like it for a lot of different things, but nothing sound-wise. So at least yet. There's a couple ideas I have. If I get into certain types of testing, I'm going to use it on that. It's going to be kind of cool. But for the most part, I bought it to do sound speeds related stuff like speed bumps. Now, the advantage of me using this particular camera, which is a 360 camera, I can dial it in straight up on me while I'm driving down the road like what you're seeing right now. But if I suddenly have someone cut me off in traffic, I can show that. I can fling over there and, you know, swing the camera around and look at the idiot that cut me off. And if I, like right now it's raining, so you can see every time I hit a puddle, I can show you the spray coming off of the wheels over there. Except I don't think that it's going to be able to see that because of the angle of the camera there to the mirror. But it's a 360 camera, so it should be able to see everything if I had it far enough forward. But I don't want to put it obstructing my view. That's a big no-no. All right, so like right now, I am driving down the road, and it looks to me like we're starting to merge in a little bit before I enter the interstate. And so, yeah. Anyway, so I'm using a Shure Twinplex TL47 going into a Deity BPTRX in record-only mode because I don't use it as a transmitter. I only use it as a recorder. And, yeah, so that and the Insta360, which I am now, also, I need to report this. Since I started doing speed bumps, I was just editing the speed bumps episodes in DaVinci Resolve because it is a whoa! This is why you need the 360 camera. That was a lot of fun. Hit a puddle and just everything goes crazy. There you go. That's why we need the Insta360. Good on you, car. Thank you for staying with me there. All right, so let's head home at 2:30 in the morning. What was I saying? I have no idea what I was saying anymore, because that was just too much fun. Oh yeah, it's raining. It's 47 degrees, and we loaded out in the rain because Michael Wynn told me that, oh, we're gonna be inside all day. But as soon as I got there, guess what? They decided not to do a scene on the blue screen indoors. They decided they were gonna do it outdoors, and it was raining. And it was raining for like 2 hours on us. So it's like, oh great, let's just go outside when it's cold because it's winter, or I guess technically, yeah, it's still winter. And gonna go outside in the freezing rain. That's just great. What was I saying though? Oh yeah, editing wise, due to the normally since I started this channel, I was using Cyberling Power Director to edit. I did not use 365. I did Power Director 15 originally. Then I changed it up and started using 16 when I thought, oh, cool, I'll upgrade, get more features. But I didn't use any of the additional features. And so I said, why upgrade anymore? I don't need to. But when I did speed bumps, I needed to blur out these windows next to me. And in doing so, I realized that CyberLink Power Director was garbage at doing that. So I said, let me try DaVinci Resolve. And I actually really liked it. So I kind of fell for it during the time of doing speed bumps, and have now gone full throttle and editing everything inside of DaVinci Resolve. So that is what I'm doing. And thanks to Aaron Parecki of the Aaron Parecki YouTube channel, I went and asked a bunch of my friends, that buy Blackmagic products, ATEM products, switchers and stuff like that. I asked a whole bunch of my friends, if you happen to have an extra license you're not using and you're interested in selling it, let me know. Well, Aaron Parecki was nice enough to actually give me an unused card that he had. So thank you very much, Aaron. I really appreciate that. The features from the studio version are very much used by me. I very much appreciate it. So awesome. So basically now I'm editing completely in DaVinci Resolve. So there you go. I'm wondering why my car keeps kind of hitting all these puddles. Anyway, so let's not waste any more time, and let's go ahead. I mean, I've been yakking away for over 10 minutes now. What a horrible intro, right? And I'm sorry about that, but hey, it is what it is. I am driving home. This is the Speed Bumps, episode 16, and we'll see how many we get out before the end of the year 2023, starting once I get a full-time show. So since I don't have any questions, we're going to just tackle two topics on the drive home tonight. The first topic we're going to discuss tonight is boom operators being very good union stewards. In fall of 2022, I was working on a show called Them Season 2. And at the very beginning of the show, the guy in charge of stunts, his name is Andy, he told me, he just was talking to me on set, and he says, I've always said that boom operators make great union stewards. Do you know who our steward is on this show? And I smiled at him. I said, yeah, me. And he said, really? That's awesome. And he had no idea that I was a steward on the show. Now, I thought about that, and I asked him, why do you think boom operators make good stewards? Because I've been a union steward on many different shows. And he said, well, because you're on set and you see everything and you hear everything and you know what's going on, but yet you don't answer to or the same people that a lot of people on set do. You're not part of that hierarchy on set. You can be very diplomatic and kind of isolated from everybody, but yet you're still very smart and problem solving and that kind of thing. I forgot the exact words he used, but he basically said it to that nature. And I thought about it and I was like, geez, you are probably right. There is a lot that can be said for someone that, like, for example, a director of photography is way too busy on set, constantly doing this, that, and the other, and cannot concentrate on union-related things. Most of the time, the majority of the crew fall into crafts that are bigger. Here in Georgia, for example, most crew members fall into IATSE Local 479. Now, camera is still 600. You have, makeup and script supervisors, and there's other departments that have their own locals too. But we're like sound, everything from sound to grip to special effects is 479. So we're very much represented on set, and it makes a lot of sense for us to have a union steward amongst us, even medics. So a lot of medics are stewards. But boom operators make very effective stewards. I was thinking about it because we see everything on set. We are also the kinds of people where a lot of camera operators, if a DP says do this, they're nervous about saying no. Oh, I'm not going to do that. That's not safe. They don't want to say no to a DP because that's just not in their nature. They don't do that. But if there's something on set that's not safe, I'm sure not going to let it happen. I will step right in front of something happening and say, I'm sorry, we need to stop. This is a safety concern. The big thing is, I learned this a few years ago, you need to say two things if there is a legit safety concern on set. You need to say, there is a safety concern for me and the crew. You don't say for me, because they'll say, that's fine, you can leave. If you say for me and the crew, and then you say, and you have a liability here. If you say those words, if you say liability, that's an insurance, type thing, that if there's a safety concern, which you are there by OSHA law, you're required, you have the right to a safe work environment. And being that we are union members on a union show, and we're required to follow certain safety guidelines, if there is a safety related concern, you definitely point it out. Now, that is not to say that if someone has a lot of, if the hazer on a set, is going, and you're like, well, I'm dying here, it's gagging me. You can ask them to turn down the hazer if it's between shots, or, man, this is kind of thick. Is it possible for us to back this off a little bit? But you're not going to be able to get away with saying this is a safety concern and calling the safety hotline and saying, this is unsafe, I can't breathe. That's not going to really happen. You have to be logical and diplomatic about things. During the COVID era, I was on a show, and as soon as we just came back from the big shutdown of 2020, the 5th day we were back on the show, the gaffer tested positive for COVID. And that was a very scary time, and a lot of people panicked on set. And they were like, we should shut down and really regain ourselves because we don't know what's going to happen and who's going to get sick or whatever. So there was a lot of concern. The same day, our UPM left. She announced and said, oh, by the way, I'm leaving the show. This is my last day. So the fact that the UPM that everyone loved was leaving happened to coincide with everybody panicking about the gaffer getting COVID and what's that going to mean, because he's been next to pretty much everybody on set. What was going to happen? I contacted the local because I started asking questions. Who's our steward? No one knew. I called our local and I said, who is our steward? And they said, we don't have one. I said, yeah, you do. You need one. I'm going to step up and do it. I haven't been a steward since like 2010 on the show, but I said, you need one, and I'm going to step up and do it. And they were like, thank you so much. So when we came back, I was pretty diplomatic about things. I understand that there was a lot of panic. I also understood that productions at the time were spending millions of dollars on COVID compliance, isolating things, separate containers and extra crew members and extra rentals. And they had basically created the whole COVID compliance department. They were paying for masks. They were paying for, shields and face shields and goggles and all these different outfits to wear. And they were putting up tents, all these different things. If you rode in a bus, you had to have 6 feet apart from everybody. So even though it was a full-size bus, you would still not get more than maybe 6-7 people on the entire 40-foot bus because of that. Pretty ridiculous, but that's what they were doing for social distancing, even though we would still pack on everybody on set. But one of the reasons why I stepped up is because I was seeing crew members that were just speaking over everybody and yelling at production and saying, you need to keep us safe, and we're your employees and whatever. But the thing is, they were doing everything they could. So when I became the steward on the show, one of the things I said was, all right, guys, yes, they are supposed to keep us safe, but we have to do our part too. We can't just say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's accountability on us too. If we feel like cramming 3 cameras in a 10-foot room with 5 cast members isn't safe, we need to point that out and tell them we should not do this. There's way too many people on this set, and it's too tight. We need to have more distance than that. It's not safe. And then you can make that legit call, and it's the steward's place to mention it to COVID compliance and let COVID or the first AD and let them handle it. But the thing was, there were so many people that were just saying, yeah, look at what they're doing to us. I can't believe what they're doing to us, making us be in these small rooms. It's like, that's the wrong way to handle it. So there are ways of handling things the right way, but blaming production is not going to be the right way to do it. Another good example was I was working on a show last year, and there was freezing rain. we were about the time we were moving outside. We had been aware for hours it was freezing rain, and production was like, yeah, we're going to go outside. And we're like, it's going to be in 20 degrees, and it's supposed to be freezing rain. And they're like, yeah, well, we have this work to do. We're going to follow the schedule. And a lot of crew members were like, we can't do this, we can't do that. And the production basically says, why not? It's freezing rain, it's too cold. Okay, well, we're going out there. They say to do it, we're going to do it. The thing is, though, I was telling people that's the wrong way to handle it. Instead of telling them why you can't do it and then them turning around saying, yeah, we can. We're going to. Instead, you say, in order for us to do this safely, you need to have track mats. So that way, if we were going to be in rain and it was freezing and there was water all over the place because of the rain, we were pushing into the woods. You're not going to push through mud. So I said I talked to the steward on the show and I said, tell them that we need track mats laid out. So track mats are basically like big sheets of thick plastic that have tire groove shaped kind of lines in it. Well, not tire groove, but it's like, lines like this and like this. So that way I should not take my hands off the wheel. So that way your cars as you're pushing through it, they have tread on it and prevent sliding from any direction. So they overlap them, so that way it gives you a clear path in there that's on a hard surface. That way you don't have to push through water and mud and whatever else. I said you might want to also let them know that it would be a great idea to have heating tents set up periodically. That way crew members can warm themselves up if it's freezing rain. Maybe it would be a good night to have water stations, preferably with hot water, for teas or coffee or soup or things like that. Crafty might bring out a soup later tonight. You might want to mention that. Things like that. Things that would be acceptable that production can delegate as instead of saying, we can't do this. They can say, you know what? I can easily have, locations, put down the track mats. Crafty, you might want to make some soups. And they can delegate this and make sure it happens so that way the crew could do it safely. Because that's really what it's all about. If you were to tell production, you can't do this, they're going to show you that they can. And they will, and they'll do it, and then you'll be out there and be miserable. So instead, what you tell them is in order for us to do this safely, we would like this. We should do this. And they're going to say, well, that sounds reasonable. If we're going to be out there anyway, might as well do it in a logical and reasonable and safe way. So being a boom operator allows me to be on set. It allows us to see the situation. We're not going to be at the mercy of freaking out about, well, I got to make someone happy. I got to make this person happy, that person that happy, this person. Yes, we want to make people happy because that's what we do it by nature. Is we like to be good, consistent crew members that don't disrupt things, but yet at the same time, we observe. We listen, we pay attention, and we're immune to the chaos that happens between a director thinking of something, telling the DP, and the DP saying, we're going to do it this way. Even if it's not necessarily the safe way. We can make sure that we're diplomatic about things, but yet we're smart enough to actually, figure out a legit way of wording it. So as a boom operator, you may say, I don't have enough time to handle all the union-related issues. The thing is, though, if someone knows that you're the steward, they can come to you with a concern between setups, and you can give them a few minutes. If you're, nonstop, fast, you can say, I will, please let me get through these setups. Is it something safety-wise? It's an urgent concern? Cool. If it's not, then I'll play catch up with you as soon as we're out of this setup or as soon as we're turning around or doing a lighting adjustment, and then follow up. But if they say, no, this is a really big deal, well, tell me real quick what it is. They'll tell you, and if it is a legit safety concern or there is a legit violation of a collective bargaining agreement or something like that, there is a legit reason that you need to hold and take a break for a second, you can. But for the most part, it's just planning ahead, working with production and on behalf of the crew, because you're not like, the big thing to keep in mind is that being a steward on the show doesn't put you in any kind of authority. You're not going to be someone that scolds people. You're not going to be the boss of anybody's that you weren't. You're not going to tell the crew, I'm in charge here. None of that stuff. That's not what you do. You don't want to have that power. You don't want to have any kind of you don't want to claim to have any kind of authority like that. You don't want to just suddenly overstate your authority there. Really, what you do is you listen to the concerns of the crew. If it seems like something that you can handle, then by all means do it. If not, then you have a path that you follow to field reps, to your business agent, to certain people in your local, which are going to be tasked with taking care of those show-related concerns. And so if you're concerned about any retaliation or production saying, you were the steward, you're the guy that did this, you're causing the trouble, and therefore you're gone. You don't want to have that be something that puts you as the face of a certain complaint. That's when you mention it to your union. You're the next chain of command above you, the people that are not on the show. And then you can have them address it. There's been a couple of times that I've had to address things like that, and I've said, yeah, I shouldn't handle that with directly with the UPM. I should not address this directly with the UPM, because if I do, he is not going to be happy. And so I've contacted the office, and they have handled it. And the UPM then comes back, and they don't say, oh, well, Alan said this, and have the UPM turn around and come back and scream at me. They say, we have been made aware of, and then they tell whoever it is, the UPM or whatever the concerns are, and they will maybe get fired up and come right back to the steward. Yeah, your business agent or your field rep called me and said I was doing this and this and this. I'm like, well, if this was a report you got, that they got, it should be addressed. And for the legitimacy, reasons of that, we got to see if it's a legit reason. And if so, that's why it was mentioned. The stewards represent the crew. So even crew members that are non-union, even crew members like PAs, if they're not unionized as of the time of this video, which they aren't as of the time of this video, then you would still represent them, because if there is a legit concern that affects the crew, that should be addressed. And even though you may say, well, that's not part of your collective bargaining, if there's a safety related concern, a lot of PAs, they're just abused. They're not, they are very low on the totem pole, the chain of command. They have like no authority, and they are quite often, they're longer than the crew. They don't have any area of complaint. If they complain to certain people, they'll say, fine, you don't like it, leave. And that's nothing that they want to do. So there are legit concerns that they will have. And then you may say, well, I don't represent them as a union steward, but you do, as just the same way as you would any other crew member that would have a legit concern. And now, obviously, if it's collective bargaining related, you can't just interject yourself in there on behalf of the PAs. That's not what you can do. But if there's been a show that I was on where I went out and they had the PAs actually sitting outside in a tent along with COVID compliance, and this poor PA had her feet sitting in a puddle of water about an inch thick, and I look down and I see that there's a power out. The power for her laptop is literally going into a stinger that is sitting in that pool of water. And I went over there, threw my gloves on real quick, and lifted that out of the water. And I said, "Oh no. We are not doing that." I told her, the very first thing I told her is, I said, all right, stand up, get your feet out of there for a second, please. And then I reached down there and I picked it up and I laid it on top of the table and I said, all right, that could have been bad. That's a safety related concern. And so I went and talked to the UPM, who I was on great terms with, and I said, hey, this is a potential problem. We have the basically a stinger and power sitting in 1 inch of water. That could have been bad. And they're like, oh, yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I'll make sure that that's resolved. And so what he did is he moved, he had that entire tent area moved to an area that was higher, and then had like these like pads put down on the ground. So that way that rain would go through that people were standing on the elevated rubber type pad. So, and sitting on that. And then they basically made sure that any of the power was not sitting on the ground. It was actually elevated and laying on the table, which is what I told them they should do. I also gave them some of my silicone rescue tape and said, if it's raining, you need to wrap this around there just to make sure it makes a water seal. And they were very appreciative. But, it's one of those things where PAs can mention a complaint like that, and it'll go in one ear and out the other on some people. You're going to say, yeah, just deal with it. You're going to be fine. Figure it out. But the thing is, though, a lot of PAs don't understand things. And they don't understand the way things are. And they don't understand to speak up. A lot of the things that when you're young on a film set, you're nervous about speaking up. You don't want to speak up to someone who seems like they have this extreme authority and that you're going to be, in trouble if you say something. The fact of the matter is, though, if it's a legit safety concern, speak up, because you're not at fault. If it's a legit safety concern, there is a thing that needs to be addressed, and that they will do that. But a lot of the times when you're younger, you're nervous about ruffling feathers and you don't want to make someone mad, or you're nervous that you're going to get fired. If it's a safety related concern, you're not going to be fired over. And if you are, you have grounds for, causing trouble if you really want to. So boom operators, again, just to kind of come full circle about this, have the ability to talk to people, to listen to people. We hear concerns. We see concerns. We don't have to make the DP happy. We don't have to make other departments happy, except basically the sound mixer. And as long as we do our job on set and we do it well, and we just listen, and we're there as someone that people on set can talk to, because usually sound people are pretty cool and chill. A lot of people will say, oh, the sound people are usually the coolest people on set. We'll gladly talk to you. And then I look at them and I'm like, you think I'm cool? Really? That's a mistake. But, that's still, funny to say. But, people will still say it. They'll still say, oh, yeah, the sound people are always really cool and chill. But for that reason, I would definitely agree. Boom operators make great stewards. So if you are a boom operator, consider looking into what it takes to be a union shop steward if you're working on union shows. Because many times shows will have a steward, but many times they also won't. Or if they do have a steward, that is not someone on set. It might be a medic who always sits in an office off set. And by you volunteering and seeing the interactions on set and seeing that, it might take 3 hours for them to bring water to set, unless you mention it at call time. And you say, it's 95 degrees out today, high humidity, and I'm not seeing any water on set, and it's 15 minutes before call. Can we maybe get some water out here so we don't have crew members starting off the day dehydrated? Oh, that's a good point. Let's get water out here on set. So that kind of thing. But yeah, so if you're a boom operator, consider being a shop steward. So the other topic that I'm going to discuss real quick here is the need for content. Coming out of the shutdown of 2020, I mentioned it before, production was skyrocketing through the roof. Everyone wanted to basically create content to make up for the lack of content that was created for a few months during the shutdown. But that was not sustainable. Now, another thing that happened at the same time is you have all these different not TV stations, but you have all these different networks, and you have different production companies creating all these different, content and trying to create content. They also decided they wanted to make their own streaming platforms. Originally, it was Netflix, and Netflix was putting out a whole lot of things, and people were like, "Oh, we got to get our stuff on Netflix." But over the course of time, people started pulling their stuff back off because they were like, "Yeah, we want to make our own streaming platform." Whether it's Stars, whether it's Disney Plus, whether it's Paramount Plus, whether it's HBO Max, all the different, basically everything now has their own streaming services at the time of this video. But if there was one thing that the shutdown in 2020 taught us, is that binge watching content would happen real quickly, and then people would say, well, what else is there for us to watch now? There's nothing else for us to watch. I'm going to leave your service and go to something else. Even Disney Plus, when it first launched, people after only a month or two were saying, well, I've watched everything on your streaming platform. There's really nothing else for me to watch. What else do you have? Well, it's like, what doesn't Disney own? There's a lot of Nat Geo stuff. There's Marvel, if that's your thing. There's, all the animated stuff. There's just so many different things that you could watch. But yet people were just like, oh yeah, well, we've watched everything. They binge watch it all. So then they're going to say, well, we're going to go ahead and cancel Disney Plus, and we're going to go to another streaming platform. And many of the streaming platforms were also offering extreme discounts, or they were offering their first month free. The thing is, though, there's only so much you can put on a streaming platform before people start to get kind of bored with it. Yes, you can go back and do what they did during 2020 and say, hey, did you like Friends? Well, guess what? We brought back all episodes of Friends so you can watch it. Well, they already owned it. You liked it back then when it aired. You might as well like it now and enjoy it during the shutdown. It gave them something to put on the streaming platform that wasn't new. They already owned it, and they could entertain. But the thing is, though, there's only so many shows you can bring back and entertain people and have them want to stay on your platform. People want to see new stuff. It's cool to see the retro stuff, but they're going to want to see new stuff. So that's what they're going to want to do. So streaming platforms right now have hit a point where people are tired of watching their stuff. It's still a lot of money to maintain, so they're going to start combining again. At least that's my prediction. They're going to start having similar services combined, so that way they can put different types of content that are very similar onto the same streaming platform. It's like if Disney just had their animation movies and their and that kind of stuff. They did not own Nat Geo and all the different other brands that they own, and put all that on Disney Plus. Like, what is it also? 20th Century Fox, isn't that owned by Disney now? You can watch 20th Century Fox shows on Disney Plus. I think so. I might not be remembering correctly, but then after all, it is like 3 a.m. now. So, with all the different brands that Disney owns, if they didn't own them, then you were going to be looking at it and saying, well, I don't want to just sit there and watch all the Disney animated movies from, going back to the 20s or whatever. It'd be kind of boring, I guess, for a lot of people, especially adults. Especially if they weren't doing like Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and releasing, season after season after season of that, and then releasing all the new Star Wars movies and stuff that they're doing, TV shows, and just basically just maximizing on all their, and profitizing on all their different brands that they own. But even then, people are still saying, what does Disney have for me anymore? I've already watched everything. So the streaming platforms are going to start to come back together. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to have to watch and see if they're going to continue to raise the price, because they're raising prices because they have to maintain the cost of the streaming platform. And that might mean creating new content. It might mean licensing more shows, or it might mean that they're just not getting the membership that they need to, and having people pay enough money for their service to keep them afloat. So if that's the case, you need to basically do what? Raise your prices. But what does that do? It drives customers away. So it's one of those catch-22s. In order to stay afloat with a streaming platform, you got to charge more money. But if people don't want to pay it, then you're going to be, you could raise your price all you want, but if people don't pay it, there's that curve, the law of diminishing returns. You got to find the place where the price is the highest before you drive them away. So you got to find the point where the price is just high enough and to keep the membership without them leaving, in order for you to maximize your profits. And if you lower it too much just to get as many people as you want to on the platform, it's not going to pay for itself, because people are using too much streaming bandwidth. If you raise it up too much, everyone's going to leave your platform and no one's going to want to pay for it. So there's got to be a happy medium. But, here's the thing. Back in the 1980s, we had, you had your TV guide. And every single week, you look at it and say, what new movies are coming out? You look up all the movies and you say, ooh, this one's on Showtime. This one's on Cinemax. This one's on HBO. This is on the movie channel. And you'd figure out what all the different channels were going to be airing the movies that were just now hitting their platforms. But they would only have the ability to pay to license it maybe 2 times. Well, they're not going to air those in the middle of the night. They're going to want to air it in a primetime slot when everyone's going to be watching it, so that way that it is going to basically maximize the amount of viewers and really bring value to your streaming, or to your, not streaming, but to your premium channel. Because if you aired, your premium content at a time no one's watching it, they're not going to want to do it. Now, sure, they could VCR it, but a lot of the fun of watching those kinds of things is watching them live, being able to flip channels and say, oh, cool, I'm going to watch this now. I'm glad I have this channel. But if you are in a circumstance where you are not, if you're just recording it on VHS, then why not just get it at a video store? So, I mean, why would you do that? If you could rent it for a couple of dollars at a video store, then why not do that? But the bigger point here is back in the 80s, it was kind of, we had a different type of thing. Like the streaming platforms now are just having to put old content on there. In the 80s, there was a lot of movies that were being created on like very small budgets, like $250,000 or less, even, you know, like $100 million, or I'm sorry, $250,000. What am I saying? A quarter of $1 billion, not $1 billion. That was right. So it's like either that or even like $100,000, and say, okay, so we want you to have this show that's going to be, there's a police officer here. That's interesting. So if we want to have a show that is, that we want to produce it as cheap as possible, so that way someone will buy it and air it in the middle of the night. Whether they watch it or not, who cares? But it was the 80s, so it usually had some sort of skin. You know, it was like, oh, it's taking place on the beach. It's going to have topless women running around, and there was like little plot or whatever. But it was airing in the middle of the night, and that was the 80s way, so that's the kind of stuff we did all the time. And it was fun, it was cool, and whatever, blah, blah, blah. It made everybody happy. But more importantly, it gave these premium channels something to operate and to show in the middle of the night. Streaming platforms, once you end up watching all the premium content, you might say, oh yeah, sure, I mean, I'm still paying for this, might as well watch something, and you're going to watch whatever else is streaming on the platform. Similarly, that's what they did in the 80s. They didn't want to put non-stop premium content on there. It was very cheap to license some stuff that you would air in the middle of the night, so that way you at least had stuff on the channel all night long. Because if the channel basically went dark at midnight and it came on at 7 a.m., well, that was Eastern time. That means 9 p.m. until like 4 a.m. Pacific. That's kind of ridiculous. You need to have something on at all times to make people happy. And that's what they did. So there is right now a big push to try to create content, but it's starting to get too expensive. Post-COVID, you know, we're having to scale down on a lot of the content creation. So there's going to be a swelling that had basically happened, and it's starting to kind of level itself out. It's going to diminish at some point, but it's one of those things you definitely got to be aware of and plan ahead, because the productions cannot sustain the level of production that they're currently putting out, especially when people are being incentivized to join their streaming platforms, but they're not paying full prices. So they're going to, at some point in time, leave the show or leave the premium channel and not be paying for it. So if people keep doing that and they're incentivized to join another streaming service and they're on a free trial, then they're not going to be, and the streaming platforms are not going to be happy about not having the money to actually produce shows. So it's a weird catch-22 that's going to end up happening. It's going to come back to bite people in time. So that's a little bit about the need for content and the status of things right now, at least as I understand it, and my own processing it and speculation. So there you have it, episode 16 of Speed Bumps. I want to thank you for watching, and I'm sorry that I rambled quite a bit in this. I will credit part of this to me driving home in the middle of the night after working a 12-hour day. But that's really no big deal, because I do that all the time. And as you can see, I'm perfectly fine. I'm wired, actually. But I definitely appreciate you tuning in and watching. For those of you that watched the entire time, sorry I rambled. Hopefully this was at least somewhat entertaining. Tell me in the comments below what you think about this video quality on the Insta360 X3. Now, granted, in DaVinci Resolve, you can do a lot of really cool things about brightening up dark footage, and it's not going to look 100% right, especially with little bitty patches of light that are going to hit me, red lights, green lights, as I go through street lights or whatever. But this is the reality that we have. It's a pretty cool scenario that we had here going with this Insta360 camera. And by the time I get it into post and brighten it up a little bit, I've run a couple of tests on this where I drove around in the middle of the night. I went to the post office at like 2 a.m. because they have kiosks and you can send things out. So it's kind of cool to be able to send things out in the middle of the night, because they're open 24 hours a day for you to access their post office boxes. And they have a kiosk there that you can go in there and you can send something via priority mail or whatever you want to in the middle of the night. So when people would buy cables from me or something like that, or I'd want to send something out, then I could do that in the middle of the night if I wanted to. And I did a couple of tests to see what did I think and how I'd be able to brighten this up. So you tell me in the comments, what do you think about the picture quality? I usually have pretty positive responses with regards to the audio quality, because basically I'm using a Shure Twinplex TL47 right there, running into the Deity BPTRX recorder right over here. So yes, it's still recording, which is great. So basically that's my audio in the signal flow. I'm pulling this out now. You might be hearing some noise on this, but I could go ahead and start to pull this now because this episode is over. I'm going to put this down here. And thank you once again for watching. Tell me what your thoughts are on the picture quality. Do you like this better than the security camera? Even though the security camera is brighter, it's going to be lower resolution. Not that this is great resolution, since it's basically in the middle of the night. It's black and brightened up in post. But which do you like better? This or the security camera? Tell me in the comments. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Speed Bumps Podcast, and I will see you in episode 17.
If you'd like to ask a sound-related question to be answered in a future episode, send text, audio, or video to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Want to record this outro? Details in the description below. Find us on social media and online at www.soundspeeds.us. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more sound-related content.